New COVID developments today from the world of high school sports. Today, the Bolt-Palito Blanco ISD became the first school district to cancel its football and volleyball seasons because of the virus. Our sports director, Chris Thomason, has the details.
Yeah, Joe, the Badgers School Board decided not to have in-person schooling until at least after October 30th, which was an extension of the Jim Wells County order, which called for no in-person classes until early October. For them, that also meant no athletics until then, which ended the seasons for football and volleyball, since the playoffs would have been starting around that time. Cross country, though, is still allowed to compete down the line, seeing as how those athletes can train at home. Coming up tonight at 6, we'll talk with Ben Bolt head football coach and athletic director Gary Cunningham and get his thoughts on those seasons being shut down. Now, while the Badgers are the first to outright cancel their seasons, there are several others that have either delayed the start of practices or, like these few teams here, have started practices only to have to suspend them. Beeville Jones announced late last night that their athletics have been temporarily suspended due to rising coronavirus numbers in the community and 4 positive tests within the district. Skidmore-Tynan announced over the weekend that their football and volleyball practices were suspended after 2 volleyball players tested positive and a football player came in contact with someone who was positive. Taft suspended its football practices for 2 weeks last Monday after a player tested positive. Interestingly enough, though, Taft volleyball is currently playing in the first athletic event back in the Coastal Bend. Their volleyball team on the road at Woodsboro, and District 31 3A announcing there will be no sub-varsity play in both volleyball and cross country. We'll, of course, have more updates both on Ben Bolt and surrounding schools as we get them. Well, that'll do it for me. For 3 News, I'm Chris Thomason. Back to you.